From guns to stereotypes to raunchy humor, here are 30 times Pokémon had to be banned or censored. And let's start with the most stereotypical American character. With biceps the size of bald eagles and a military background that screams America, Lieutenant Surge is basically how the Japanese see the US of A. Like he's the embodiment of the 4th of July. Japan, of course, has a long history with the US military, naturally turning Surge into a G.I. Joe character. This explains why his Japanese voice actor sounds like a cowboy trying to order sushi, while throwing in a goddamn pretty much every sentence. So now you know why this had to be toned down in the English dub. But honestly, I ain't even mad about the American stereotype. But then there's the borderline racist Team Rocket getup. If you thought Surge was stereotypical, wait until you see Team Rocket's questionable style choice in episode 15. They went full 90s schoolgirl with dyed blonde hair and tanned skin, channeling the Gangaroo trend. But the English dub probably thought, let's not do this. After all, American audiences might think that Jesse and James joined a blackface convention with their getup.
Don't I look like the coolest girl? Stop acting like an ignoramus.
And speaking of Team Rocket, let's look at, James and his melons. James strikes again with his wild costume choices. In episode 18, known as a lost episode by fans, he goes all out by cross-dressing and wearing a bikini. And it's not the bikini that got this episode stricken out of the English dub. Instead, it's because James decided to be a real diva and strut around with large inflatable breasts. He even attempts to make underaged Misty jealous over his comically oversized assets. But that's not the only dirty humor in Pokémon. There's also the upskirt lyrics. If you've always watched the Pokémon anime in the English dub, you'd notice that there's a girl with an orange top and a green skirt in the first opening song. Yeah, the one that Pikachu almost upskirted. Well, that's because the Japanese opening song includes a line that translates to, even if in fire, in water, in grass, in forests and ground, in clouds, in that girl's skirt. The song implies that Ash may need to go up a girl's skirt to find all the Pokemon. And come on, Ash, you know there's no Pokemon up there, I hope. Now, censoring scenes is one thing, but cutting an entire short is another. Remember Pikachu shorts in the Pokemon movies? The third one was an electrifying adventure involving Pikachu and Pichu. Fans loved it for 9 years until it disappeared faster than a running Rapidash. Why? Well, the Japanese narrator got busted for drugs and went on the run. Outraged fans called for her and all of her work to be cancelled. Meanwhile, the Pokemon Company acted very quickly, snapping their fingers like Thanos to make that Pikachu short vanish. Of course, censorship is also a thing in the manga, especially if it's in regards to something a bit too private, like taking a leak. The Pokemon manga usually gets away with a bit more, but when Emerald was caught taking a leak in chapter 601 of Pokemon Adventures Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire arc, let's just say the English translators weren't thrilled about it, so they decided to flush that scene altogether. Now that we're on the subject of adult content, check out this one from the games. A wink too far. There's always a fine line between that's perfectly okay and that's just a bit too much. And in Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, the female swimmers originally winked just like the beauty trainers. But I guess the problem here is that these NPCs wear nothing but bikinis, so when paired with their winks, I guess the Pokemon Company just thought they became way too seductive for younger players, and the devs had to censor the wink out. Even the Pokemon themselves aren't strangers to being a bit too raunchy in the games. For instance, Nidoqueen got her freak on in Pokemon Stadium 2, at least in the eyes of many players, I guess. When left idle, the pixelated graphics of the Nintendo 64 made it look like she was juggling her chest. This was immediately altered for the American version because the last thing that the Western market needed was for their kids to develop a bizarre fetish for poorly animated monster boobs. But we also can't forget about that weird milk joke. Misty wasn't exactly spared from getting weirdly sexualized in the episode The Kangaskhan Kid, which is basically a Tarzan-inspired story about a human kid being raised by a Kangaskhan. The trio meets this kid who notices Misty's breasts. The camera quickly focuses on Misty's chest as the kid asks if he can have some milk. The English dub didn't censor the entire scene, but merely changed the dialogue to make it more kid-friendly.
What's the matter?
You people are
And we also can't forget about the classic Western game edit, I need my coffee. We're talking about a theme that's a bit too adult for kids to be exposed to early on unless the Pokemon Company wants its fans to grow up into drunkards. In Pokemon Red and Green, if you attempted to head north of Viridian City before delivering a package to Professor Oak, a passed out drunk blocked the path. But this was changed to a man who was too tired to get up because he hadn't had his cup of morning joe yet. So I guess this probably explains why some Pokemon fans like myself developed a crippling coffee addiction. But on the topic of addictions, no more gambling. Gambling is a big no-no when it comes to Western video games. Well, I mean, it was. Kids' brains today are so cooked on loot boxes and Twitch gambling that may have changed. But years ago at least, game companies drew the line at kids gambling. That's why gambling themes in games often got taken out, and Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were no different. The gambler trainers got rebranded as gamers in the English version, as if they were more interested in Pac-Man than in making money on slot machines. By the time Pokemon Platinum rolled out, you couldn't even use the slot machines anymore. And come Generation 5, the game corner was gone altogether. Sensitivity has always been an issue in Pokemon, and we can see that in how they changed Jinx's color in the games. Everyone knows that Jinx originally rocked a black skin tone, but Westerners saw this and said, no, we can't have this. So by the time Pokemon Gold and Silver were out on the market, Jinx had undergone a dramatic transformation that turned its skin into a shade of purple. They tried to convince us it was all inspired by the 90s Gangaroo Girl fashion trend, but the issue came from the fact that Westerners didn't know what the heck that was. And they had to take entire episodes out because of Jinx. Going back to the Jinx saga, Japanese animators stuck to their guns and kept Jinx with a black skin tone for a while. But the Western dub didn't take it too well, so what they ended up doing was just deciding to ghost 2 whole episodes because Jinx wasn't purple enough for their taste. But there are other early episodes of the anime that had to be cut as well. After all, Tentacruel can't melt steel beams. The 9/11 attacks caused some censorship in the US Pokemon anime broadcasting. First up was the Tower of Terror. This episode was banned for years just because of its name. In the episode, Ash travels to Lavender Town to catch a Ghost-type Pokemon to win a rematch against Sabrina and her Psychic-type gym. There's actually no offensive content here, but the title alone got it pulled from rotation, which is actually a shame because this was one of my favorite episodes as a kid.
I don't get it. They're weird.
And then there was Tentacool and Tentacruel, which was banned for several years because it showed a giant Tentacruel destroying buildings, including a skyscraper. But if you want to know the really weird part, scenes from this episode, like Tentacruel smashing a building, were still used in the show's opening sequence. But skipping episodes continued for more than 1,000 episodes into the anime. Episode 1003 didn't make the final cut in the English dub, and we can't blame Jinx this time. This time, it's all on Ash. Our heroic Pokemon trainer decided to go undercover as a Passimian, which have dark-colored fur. So naturally, Ash put on dark face paint, and you know where this is going. To many, an innocent costume, but not to some American audiences that labeled it a bit too close to blackface. So instead of catching them all, Ash caught some controversy that led to this episode being axed. They also had to scrap an episode because of a lot of guns. Episode 35 got the boot because there was a guy pointing a gun at Ash. Like seriously, pointing a big revolver directly to his head. It's definitely an understatement to say that America is pretty trigger happy when it comes to guns. So that could explain why our audience is more sensitive when it comes to guns and kids. With that said, skipping this episode left a huge plot hole. American fans were puzzled as to how Ash managed to capture 30 Tauros in the Safari Zone, all because this episode got erased. But with that said, even Japan can ban episodes. The most famous banned episode in Pokemon history isn't because it had something racial, sexual, or cultural. It wasn't even the English version that got the episode banned. Pikachu became the unintentional master of chaos in the infamous Electric Soldier Pokemon episode. When he destroyed missiles with his electric attacks, red and blue lights start flashing on the screen. And Pikachu didn't just entertain kids, instead he practically jump-started seizures. The show got benched for a whopping 4 months to recover from that mess, which is one way to make an electrifying impression. Meanwhile, nearly a minute of an episode was removed for another milk joke, and a move that'll make you question the sanity of the English dubbing. They took out 45 whole seconds because Meowth was caught in the act of drinking milk from a Miltank's udders.
face feel much better.
It's like the artists on this one got hit with confusion. Things aren't much different when it comes to the Pokemon cards though, where Misty just can't catch a break. Misty's got it tough because the folks behind Pokemon just can't resist giving her a pretty sus makeover every now and then. In the Misty's Tears trainer card, for instance, they've got Misty hanging out with her buddy Staryu, but it looks like she decided to not wear any clothes. You'd think that someone would have thought that, hey, maybe that's not a great idea because Misty is just 12 years old. Though common sense won in the end when they swapped her birthday suit for something else. The updated version has her wearing clothes, as well as crying her eyes out while Squirtle is there for her. Of course, no one wants kids to think that drinking is normal. In Exploud and Clear, there's a scene where Team Rocket is daydreaming about Giovanni sipping a glass of wine. But I guess even international crime bosses can't handle the hard stuff in the English dub. So they decided to swap Giovanni's wine with a different liquid to keep it kid-friendly. Fast forward a decade later, Kukui and Burnett are celebrating their wedding, but instead of wine, they're drinking orange juice. I guess it must have been a really dull wedding because they couldn't even bring out the champagne. Meowth nearly turned from being a normal type to a ghost type in this dark joke. In The Sun, the Scare, the Secret Lair, there was a joke where Meowth had an out-of-body experience after seeing Mimikyu's dreaded true form. He even referenced going to, quote, the other world, as if he was saying that he died due to sheer horror.
I almost took a trip down that long tunnel again.
This made it clear that Meowth nearly became a ghost-type Pokemon permanently, but the Western dub censored the part of Meowth's soul fleeing his body to make it look like he just fainted.
I'll battle that lug.
Still, I gotta say, a ghost form Meowth would be pretty awesome. But some themes can also be a bit dark for Japanese audiences. Episode 39 of Pokemon Black and White, scheduled for April 7th, 2011, was banned. The episode was heavily water-themed, making it too insensitive after a real-life tsunami devastated Japan just a month earlier. It seems the Pokemon team missed the memo on bad timing because they were able to make a huge splash for the wrong reason, so the episode was temporarily benched. Still, even something simple can get erased from an episode, like a Hitler stash. In episode 1080, Settling the Score Bunny, there's a guy at the train station in the Japanese version rocking a mustache, but it wasn't just any old mustache. Instead, it was the real doppelganger for the most famous stash in history, the one belonging to a certain dude named Adolf. The mustache had to be shaved off for the English dub, so sorry buddy, the Hitler stash is not making a comeback. That said, English audiences also did not see this salute in their version of the anime. In the episode All Things Bright and Beautifly, a scene with Team Rocket needed censoring. In the original Japanese version, Jesse James Meowth and a group of Team Rocket grunts performed a salute that was similar to the Nazi salute. In the English version, this was changed. Jesse holds both arms up, James' arm is lowered, and the Team Rocket grunts keep their arms at their sides. But then again, for some reason, Meowth's pose was left unaltered. On that note, the Koga's Ninja Trick card had an unfortunate symbol on it, at least to Western audiences. The Japanese rendition of the trainer card Koga's Ninja Trick prominently features a Buddhist symbol that bears a striking resemblance to the infamous swastika used by the Third Reich. Despite the historical precedence of the Buddhist symbol predating the swastika by centuries, the artist was understandably entrusted with the task of redesigning the card for its international launch. The updated version of Koga's Ninja Trick, which can be found in the Gym Challenge expansion, saw the removal of the symbol in favor of an alternative Eastern-inspired symbol that carried less controversial connotations in the West. And that all makes me feel better because I was a bit concerned that Golbat was trying to radicalize us as young Pokemon fans. Another Pokemon card taught us that Grimer probably belongs on a registry. The Japanese version of a card for the Pokemon Grimer has Grimer looking up the skirt of a young girl, prompting the Pokemon Company to call Chris Hansen on this disgusting pocket monster, and making a slight adjustment to the cards so that its eye line is changed. And maybe not as egregious as Grimer's behavior, the gym leader Sabrina may have given us all the finger. Well, that was the concern, anyway. In the Gin Heroes set, the original Japanese card was interpreted as her flipping the bird. Though it is kind of a stretch, the concern didn't stop the Pokemon Company from completely redesigning the card for the English release. But let's talk about another milk joke. The Moo Moo Milk trainer card underwent an art overhaul upon its release outside Japan. The initial design depicted a scene where a Pokemon was suckling an artificial cow udder held by what appeared to be a farmer, and it's definitely weird. In anticipation of potential concerns over the original artwork's appropriateness for the American target audience, they revamped the card's design, and in the US version of Moo Moo Milk, the new artwork showcased a barn filled with Moo Moo Milk and a Cleffa. But while we're on the topic of banned Pokemon cards, let's just take a moment to talk about Kadabra being banned. Why was Kadabra banned from the Pokemon trading card game? Kadabra remained elusive for many years, as the card mysteriously vanished from the game. Back in 2000, an illusionist named Uri Geller filed a lawsuit against the Pokemon Company. His claim was based on the striking resemblance between Kadabra and himself, both in name and appearance. Geller also discovered that Kadabra's Japanese name, Yunguru, seemed to be a combination of his own names. As a result of the lawsuit, the Pokemon Company removed Kadabra from card sets and phased it out of the anime. The good news is that Geller has now decided to withdraw his opposition, allowing the Pokemon Company to reintroduce Kadabra after more than 2 decades. In a conversation with Kotaku, Geller acknowledged his error in judgment. He mentioned that becoming a grandfather and observing his granddaughters playing with the cards helped him realize the mistake he had made. But finally for today, we have to talk about Brock and his usual antics. Brock has always been what Gen Z now calls a simp since day one, often throwing himself at any woman in the Pokemon series in his failed attempts to secure a girlfriend. But he got a bit too carried away with his words in the School of Hard Knocks, where he said,
"She can violate my rights if..."
The line was cut out of many versions of the show because it was clear that Brock was acting a bit too inappropriate, to the point that he was basically saying that the girl could have her way with him. From controlling Pokemon against their will, to murder and straight up trying to take over the multiverse, these are the most evil things Team Rocket has ever done.
Surrender now or prepare to fight.
And what better place to start than the second episode of the anime, Pokemon Emergency? And yeah, there was a time when our favorite trio of Jesse, James, and Meowth were actually serious villains. Breaking into the Viridian City Pokemon Center, they used coughing as a smokescreen to try and blur our hero's vision and steal all the Pokeballs. This was basically a terrorist attack on a hospital. They were successful in cutting the power, but thankfully Nurse Joy had a backup. A whole gaggle of Pikachu she dubbed
"We've got our own Pika power source."
After some failed attempts at taking them down. Seriously, Misty, you're experienced enough to know that Goldeen needed water. All the Pikachu attack Team Rocket with a gigantic electric attack. They also heal Ash's beat up Pikachu, who adds some extra Pika power to eventually cause the very first in a long line of blast-offs.
That Pikachu is no ordinary Pikachu.
But let's dial things up to 100 and talk about how Team Rocket once cut off Slowpoke tails. In the Gen 2 games, Team Rocket was found harvesting a whole bunch of Slowpoke tails in Azalea Town. And honestly, what is wrong with you people? Everybody knows Slowpokes are like the chillest Pokemon, how dare you? Considering they're being used for both money and food, it sounds like PokePeta would not approve of this. But more importantly, what do the Slowpoke think? Pokedex entries contradict the pain they might feel, with some saying it takes them 5 seconds to feel it, and others saying they don't feel anything. But regardless, what Team Rocket did wasn't humane, and while the Slowpoke's tails do grow back, I'm sure they don't like the idea of them being used for meals. It's the same idea as SpongeBob and Patrick picturing their butts being mounted on Mr. Krabs' wall.
So have fun with the job!
Now, from gathering tails to gathering Pokemon themselves, Team Rocket once posed as breeders to capture Pokemon. In the anime episode The Breeding Center Secret, Cassidy and Butch, or is it Biff? Bill? Whatever, ran a fake breeding center to take in as many Pokemon as possible to give to Giovanni.
We'll be his absolute favorites!
They later closed off the front entrance, but Ash and company managed to find a back door unlocked. And honestly, if they wanted this to be a successful evil scheme, then they probably should have made sure the back door was locked first. But of course, we can't let the bad guy win. And spoilers, the big bad is arrested and the Pokemon are saved. At least they were smart enough to frame Ash and friends as burglars to get them arrested, something Jesse, James, and Meowth would likely be too dumb to get away with. However, Team Rocket would later round up Pokemon without the help of their own trainers in the episode Pikachu Revolts. We come across Cassidy and Bob once again as all the Pokemon throughout Mandarin Island were hypnotized by Drowsy to come to a lab. And this even included poor Pikachu. After being attacked by their own Pokemon, Jesse and James teamed up with Ash and friends to bring the Pokemon back to their senses.
I knew you guys had come through!
And you know what? Maybe they aren't as bad as we originally thought. Officer Jenny's resilient Ghastly took on all the Pokemon's attacks, while Ash cleverly made Pikachu aim for him, leading to the destruction of the machine that Drowsy was hooked up to. But that wasn't the only time Team Rocket made Pokemon do something against their will. Remember in Gen 2 when they forced the evolution of a ton of Magikarp in the Lake of Rage? Using special radio waves, they caused dozens of Magikarp to evolve prematurely, when, they could have found different powerful Pokemon to catch. And there was a single red Gyarados right in the middle of the lake, ripe for the picking. I mean, wouldn't that have been enough? I guess not, because instead you had to upset it by treating a bunch of its brethren to the most intolerable noises possible. But let's jump into a whole new territory, screwing with legendary Pokemon. The first of these is, of course, Mewtwo from the first movie. Here, Dr. Fuji and his team created Mewtwo from the DNA of Mew. Later, Mewtwo broke out of its test tube and outright murdered all the scientists.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokémon, and we succeeded.
And to be totally honest, I don't blame it. I'd also want to demolish anyone who'd dehumanize me and treat me as if I'm some sort of experiment. Giovanni then came and told Mewtwo he could help it harness its powers. How, you may ask? Putting it in a suit of armor and having it beat all the challengers in the Viridian City gym. Hey buddy, maybe if you didn't put Mewtwo through all this suffering, it wouldn't go on its attempted quest for world domination and Ash wouldn't have gotten turned into stone. But don't think that's the last of it. Team Rocket also had the gall to capture a baby Lugia. But first, we do have to ask, how does a baby Lugia even exist when there's seemingly only one of its kind? I guess we won't question it because there are more pressing matters at hand. Cassidy and Ben, that was his name, right?
That name's not Buzz, it's Butch, didn't you hear me the first time?
Returned once again to capture poor baby Silver to take to the scientist Dr. Namba. They also used Silver as bait to capture its parents, and Namba intended to use it as a test subject for his invention.
Namba's nasty Pokemon provoker!
A headband which makes Pokemon stronger by making them more enraged. Jesse and James quit being bad guys once again and helped free the parent Lugia, and after a series of battles, the machine making the headbands work was destroyed. Oh, and the Team Rocket trio was sent blasting off again amidst the chaos. And it doesn't even end there. Remember Operation Tempest, which saw Team Rocket capture Meloetta to use it to take control of the legendary genies? Yeah, I know they're not technically genies, just shut up. Anyway, Giovanni captured Ash and Pikachu in a cube thing and told poor Meloetta to come with him or see them get crushed.
That's a good Pokemon.
Meloetta submitted with Ash and Pikachu spared, and the three were taken to the Abysmal Ruins, where Giovanni used a recording of Meloetta's song to unveil the reveal glass. As Meloetta suffered, Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus emerged from the sky. Look at their designs. Doesn't that just scream genie?
Excuse me? Are you looking at me?
Using the reveal glass, Giovanni urged the genies to go into battle as they turned into their Therian forms and wreaked havoc. After Ash and Pikachu saved Meloetta, Giovanni looked directly into the reveal glass, possessing him and commanding the genies to destroy Unova. With the other Team Rocket members noting they only want to take over the region, Jesse, James, and Meowth managed to tackle him and get him back to his senses. So even the bad guys have their limits. But capturing and stealing Pokemon is one thing, but what about actually killing them? That's exactly what Team Rocket did to a Marowak. While trying to steal the skulls of Cubone in Lavender Town for money, one particular Cubone was protected by its mother, which heartbreakingly got killed. This is one of the saddest moments in the entirety of the Pokemon series and truly makes Team Rocket irredeemable. And this gets even sadder in Pokemon Origins when the Marowak's ghost consoles its child and says goodbye. It really turns on the waterworks. And did you think that they wouldn't stop with Pokemon? It turns out that they're also okay with killing people too, as seen in the anime episode, A Scare in the Air, where Giovanni assigned Jesse, James, and Meowth to a mission on a blimp.
Only special operatives are chosen for this duty.
This seems innocent enough at first, but Giovanni's intent was revealed, as he wanted to get rid of the trio for their many failures, and collect the blimp's insurance policy. I mean, it's a crafty 2-for-1 deal for sure, but wouldn't it have been easier to just fire them? As for the blimp, I guess crashing it is one way to get rid of it, but he could have just broke it down and sold its parts. But lastly, what else could top murder? Well, how about trying to take over the entire multiverse? In Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Giovanni led Team Rainbow Rocket, an organization consisting of evil team leaders from alternate universes, in which they succeeded in their goals in an attempt to conquer the multiverse. This is one scary thought. Like, imagine Archie from Team Aqua flooding the world with Kyogre, or Cyrus from Team Galactic tearing into space-time with Dialga and Palkia. Just thank Arceus the player was there to stop them, because who knows what could have happened. When a franchise has been around for as long as Pokémon has, it takes a special kind of effort to stay on fans' radar. Sometimes, for instance, that could mean making the absolute weirdest commercials or products that you can think of. So, without further ado, let's take a totally harmless bus ride to all the weirdest Pokémon commercials that we've seen over the years. And we're gonna start with some of the tamer ads on the list. These are some of the most interesting game commercials. The advertising power of friendship. Now, as it usually goes, we're starting off with the more endearing kinds of weird commercials. Like this one for Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, where a bunch of people of all ages, genders, and fashion senses pose for photos with Pokemon that they each resemble, mostly via their outfits and demeanor. And honestly, we need more fun commercials like this. Let us know which Pokemon you weirdly resemble in the comments. Personally, I think I'm a Dedenne guy myself. Disclaimer, friends required for 100% completion. If you want to collect all the OG Pokemon, worry not, this commercial shows you how to do it efficiently by trading with others. Now, we should clarify that children should not be lassoing cords across each other's houses to link their Game Boys together for Pokemon trading. Not because it's dangerous, but because Pikachu will handle it for you. I'm going to Pokemon Snap. Theming a commercial for a game all about taking pictures of Pokemon around a safari makes sense. That said, come on dude, they're right behind you. They're literally everywhere but where you're looking. Just turn around and take the picture. I don't care if they're made of weird CGI, just point and shoot. You know, with a camera. Crushing defeat. If you thought taking pictures of Pokemon was cool, just wait. In this commercial for Pokemon Stadium, a spectacle is made of the first game where you can battle with Pokemon in 3D. This also adds another commercial to the not quite good, not quite terrible CGI category. Of course, the best part just has to be that huge Snorlax being hailed as the winner, despite not even being part of the battle. A small price to pay for a classic fat joke. I'll always choose you, Pikachu. Japanese commercials are often super bizarre to those of us in a Western audience, but this Hey You Pikachu ad is actually both tame and adorable. This businessman speaks to Pikachu and is in absolute disbelief when Pikachu responds to him. Honestly, get yourself someone as devoted to you as this guy is to Pikachu. You gotta love that dramatic scream he lets out when Pikachu goes to sleep. Don't hate the player, right? This commercial for Pokemon Pinball really puts into perspective what you're apparently doing when you play the game. For your own sick pleasure, you're forcing these characters into Pokeballs and knocking them around a loud, flashy obstacle course of doom. Now, this isn't one of those PETA-esque Pokemon is slavery arguments either. They're literally all mortified at the thought of going into that machine. Thoughts and prayers for Trico, everyone. Pokémon. Remember when Zack and Cody were popular? 2 Disney Channel sitcoms weren't enough, as these guys just had to advertise everything they could get their hands on. And that even extended to advertising Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, with one brother being assigned to each. And honestly, it's a fine commercial, but the way they pronounce Pokémon kinda gives the same vibe of that one Chris Pratt interview about voicing Mario.
Man, I spent hours of my life stomping Koopas in the original Mario Brothers arcade game.
Zigzagoon. Pokemon fever was at an insane height in the early 2000s, so showing people all around of all different personalities, ages, and styles naming their favorite Pokemon isn't a bad way to build off that hype. You gotta love how everyone says their favorites named differently. The best one has to be the trio of Zigzagoon fans, and you can't blame them. I mean, just look at this guy. Honestly, peak physique. But let's move on from the games to pop culture as a whole, as these are some of the most interesting merchandise commercials. Gotta say Recall. This commercial isn't particularly strange in and of itself, but it's worth mentioning for the fact that this is the very same Burger King promo that ended up later being recalled. You see those Pokeball containers the toys came in? Yeah, their round shape found their way in front of some younger kids' windpipes, and a nationwide recall later, they were taken off the menu. Move over, Apple Watch. Who needs fancy touchscreens and apps when you have an app that lets you interact with all your favorite Pokemon characters? You can protect Pikachu from being stolen by Team Rocket, and Pikachu's there. And he says the thing. What more do you want? Useless information. Okay, I'll admit, that electronic Pokedex does look pretty cool, and I like the cool little sprites in it. That said, this Pokemon Master is really just the master of information that nobody cares about. I don't think there's ever been one person who's cared that Pidgeotto weighs more than Metapod.
That's right. You're a big fat phony.
Pure 90s energy. The quote,
When I saw that, I knew I could school it with my Charizard.
has gotta be the most 90s sentence to ever 90s. Congrats to the kid who won, even if Dragon Beats Bumblebee isn't exactly the most advanced play in the book. I just hope the poor kid who lost is okay, because the dude looks absolutely devastated. Side note, watching this kid throw around a shadowless Charizard in 2024 just hurts to watch. Part of a complete disaster, breakfast. Okay, am I the only one who's gonna stick up for the mom here? Don't get me wrong, that omelet looks absolutely revolting, but she genuinely tried to make a Pikachu breakfast for the kids. And side note, the cereal actually does look pretty good. Gotta toast them all. Sorry, Pokemon cereal, neither you nor that horrifying but very well-intentioned Pikachu omelet can compete with Pokemon waffles, each with their own Pokemon image on them. This is almost kind of misleading though. A quick Google search revealed that there were only 5 different Pokemon who were lucky enough to be printed on these babies. Meaning you can't, in fact, catch them all. But maybe that's for the best. Something about combining sweet, savory breakfast foods with gacha-styled collecting almost feels illegal. Remember kids, Pokemon Masters, stay away from the casinos. Just don't look up how to get Porygon. Pokemon Go to the Bowls. Shaped pasta, a staple of childhood diets. And the diets of adults who can quit buying that SpongeBob mac and cheese anytime they want, they just don't want to. But few have left as big an impact as the Heinz Pokemon pasta. While I sadly wasn't able to try this stuff, I'm glad I at least didn't have to feel the existential guilt this commercial would instill within me. I can catch them all, but seeing how terrified they are of being maimed by a fork and eaten, I'm not sure if I can morally catch them all. Except Gengar. He seems okay with it. Someone go perform a welfare check on Gengar. Pikachu's. Since we referenced Kraft, we can't possibly ignore the Pokemon Kraft mac and cheese shapes. This commercial has barely anything to do with Pokemon itself, but it advertises the 6 different shapes you'll find, including some of the most iconic and well-recognized Pokemon around, and also Poliwhirl for some reason. Honestly, my only critique of the commercial is that Pikachu didn't join the Cheezosaurus Rex on his awful CGI surfing trip, which is honestly a huge missed opportunity. More Pokemon, more power. This is really more or less a normal toy commercial, although admittedly, you gotta love the juxtaposition of the ominous music and narration, with that adorable little Pikachu sound. That said, the vision of a kid dancing around as multiple Pokemon fly into his pants is definitely a bit weird. But okay, enough of the tame stuff. We know most of you clicked to get to the truly bizarre commercials. Poor dog. If you buy Hey You Pikachu, your pug will get depressed doesn't really sound like a selling point. Much like one that should be the crux of your commercial. But lo and behold, this commercial tells the tale of a dog lamenting that his owner loves Pikachu more than him.
I thought I was man's best friend.
And I don't know, man, I just kind of feel bad for the dog. Your pets, you can neglect them all. Pikachu's it and stay. And yeah, that title isn't just us running out of clever headlines. they literally call the marathon Pikachu's Independence Day. That said, you gotta love the implication that Pikachu helped George Washington win the Revolutionary War. Fitbit? No thanks. I'll stick with Pokemon Pikachu 2. You know, the long-awaited sequel to Pokemon Pikachu. It's a little machine you take with you while you sit on the washing machine. And according to the narrator,
the more you shake it, the more Pikachu will do for you.
Which is, maybe a concerning lesson to teach kids. But you know what's even weirder is missing the opportunity to advertise exercising to kids in favor of encouraging them to sit on moving laundry machines. Yes, I think I am. Going back to the trading card game for a second, any kid would have surely loved to play with other kids who were big fans of the series. So this commercial probably did a pretty good job of hyping them up. Even if the narrator sounds like he's advertising a third-rate pizza place in Montana or something. And seriously, why did they do this kid's voice like that? Was it a cheesy anime reference or something? You don't have to animate real-life human mouths. Heck, you barely have to animate normal anime mouths. Dance like an electric type. German-born musician Lou Bega was featured in this WB Kids commercial, in which he sings about all the new episodes you'll be seeing soon, including 3 new Pokémon. And look, I can't be mad at him. This is the guy who sang from the Madagascar 2 Wii game. And here he was nice enough to pass the mic to Pikachu. Gotta burn 'em all. You know what the weirdest thing about this commercial is? It's not the fact that Ash just literally said that it's fine to burn your siblings to death if they tease you, and immediately being assured that he's correct by an adult. No. It's the fact that the guy wasn't even teasing. Like, it does look like he's shaving. Goose, I choose you. It's questionable enough to market a collector's edition Game Boy Color to children by telling them they should do anything to get it. But when you demonstrate that point by having said kid coerce a goose into laying one, that leads to a whole new level of moral questionability. Even worse is the fact that this kid doesn't even thank the goose for essentially giving birth multiple times. He just asks it to do it 5 more times for his friends. I seriously hope he treats his Pokemon better than he does that goose. Well-intentioned PSA. Obviously, Nintendo wasn't about to make a PSA warning people not to play their game, even if they preferred to while driving. Thankfully, Esurance came through with a parody showing some very distraught adults who crashed their cars while trying to catch Pokemon. Or, I'm sorry, a ding duck. Wow, that has gotta be a tragic existence. Brought to you by PETA. If you're starting to feel bad for fighting Pokemon, worry not. Pokemon Coliseum pulls a Kirby and makes it so the bad guys are just good guys being controlled by an evil guy. Isn't that great? We can save the Pokemon by beating them to the brink of death to snap them out of it. No, this does not work in real life. Sometimes words won't even help. Make sure you catch some tickets for Pokemon Live, featuring clearly adult Ash, Brock, and Misty, Team Rocket who's questioning their life decisions, and Pikachu who's miraculously nearly reached Ash's own height. Forget Pokemon battles. Pikachu could probably take this Team Rocket down on the basketball court. But this next category goes for the commercials that transcend all logic, reasoning, and explanation. They are the inexplicable commercials. Work hard, not smart. The phrase specially marked boxes brings back childhood memories like few others do. In this commercial, we see several kids sneaking around a grocery store to get their hands on some new Pop-Tarts with Pokemon battle figures inside. Let's not beat around the bush. Is this commercial telling kids to shoplift? Or did they just feel like sneaking around? I mean, they could have just bought the boxes of Pop-Tarts, right? Literal button mashing. For some strange reason, this sensei is training his group of child students to mash buttons in order to win at a Pokemon battle game thingy. It's a funny concept, and admittedly, some of these Japanese Pokemon toys are pretty cute. So at least we aren't getting into the disturbing stuff yet. Spoke too soon. You know, when I play video games, I usually like to not have a crushing sense of guilt and despair about it. For that reason, seeing an ad where all the cute and cuddly superpowered Pokemon get literally crushed into eternal servitude into a Game Boy player just doesn't align with our values. That said, to whoever said that, I just want to say that you absolutely nailed it. At least surely this is the only commercial that portrays Pokemon being crushed by metal, right? Wrong. Okay, seriously, is Team Rocket directing all these ads? Because these Pokemon are getting squashed and captured a lot more than I expected. This commercial even lures you into a false sense of security, like everything's gonna be okay, as the Pokemon stand peacefully in this Teletubbies-looking field. Everything's fine until, bam, they just get crushed by a giant hunk of metal. Pikachu is a menace. Pikachu is just as iconic as Pokemon itself, if not more so. He's so iconic that even we're sort of tempted to try and play this yellow edition of Pokemon, advertised as you and Pikachu versus everyone else. Sure, it's hilarious to see Pikachu and a young man working together to encage literally every kind of Pokemon in the known region, but when you think about it, isn't Pikachu committing some kind of high Pokemon treason? He's literally helping humans kidnap every other kind of Pokemon in some pretty cunning ways, too. He's betraying his own kind for what seems to be no reason but the sheer pleasure of it. Beneath that adorable smile lies a truly tumultuous soul. Okay, this one is actually inexplicable. Like, I get it, the point is that they're so cool you just can't take your eyes off them, but you could have died like 3 times in the past several minutes. Virginity, I choose you. This commercial's approach is much the same as the last. When you play Pokemon Stadium 2, nothing will compare. Not a hot swimsuit model who broke into your house, or a stunt driver who also broke into your house. Sorry, sweetheart, the only hottie I'm choosing is Charmander. But if you thought those commercials were really weird in concept or execution, wait until you can't even understand what they're saying. These are the inexplicable Japanese commercials. I dig this commercial. I have no idea if this commercial is advertising an alarm clock, a whack-a-mole game, or some other third thing. But I know one thing, and that's that I want it. Okay, I just looked it up, and it looks like it is a whack-a-mole clone. It looks like fun, so maybe we'll pick it up. Actually, it's $150 on eBay, so never mind on that. There's a ton of these Tomai Pokemon toy commercials from Japan, but this one just stands out for how odd the product itself is. And yet, it's weirdly charming. I don't even have a caption for this one. Maybe the editor can write one or just keep it like this for comedic effect. At least with the Diglett one, I could eventually tell what they were selling. But what is this? Is it a board game? Why is a Kiss ripoff just hovering around these kids trying to play it? Am I supposed to be afraid? And if I am, why is it working so well? Same game, different music genre. This time, instead of being joined by metal musicians, the children's playing of whatever this game is prompts their mother to reminisce on her partying days. After being shown a shiny disc, she flashes back to her glory days where she would, do this. Tickle me Elmo Who. Let's get to some more wholesome products. Like this adorable talking Piplup plush. I mean, just look at him. You can talk to him, tickle his belly, persuade him to smite your enemies with the fury of 1,000 icy moons, and more. Ronald's moving cards. Okay, not gonna lie, the title of this video made me think for a second that this was gonna be some weird magic trick where the cards actually move or something, but no, they're just holographic. But they are pretty good holograms though. Even these kids can't help but imitate them. Life imitates art, as they say. Plus, Piplup is here, which makes this collaboration an automatic win. 90% cute, 10% body horror. This commercial for the Japanese conglomerate Hitachi seems pretty cute. Just look at Pikachu and friends all dancing together, joyful to be a part of spreading the good word of this corporation. Then there's the human characters. The guy looks like Fix-It Felix in Lois Griffin's Secret Love Child, and the woman just looks like some background character from Jimmy Neutron. This would be the most precious little commercial without these CGI humans, but they just had to exist. Why not just edit their live action selves in? That would have been way less off-putting. Were Pokemon murdered to ensure that Mewtwo would have no weaknesses? Was a legendary Pokemon designed to be an allegory for the atomic bomb? Did Mega Evolution stem from Jirachi's wishes? Legendaries are oftentimes the Pokemon shrouded in the most mystery. So today we're visiting each region of the Pokemon world to explore some of the most interesting theories about legendary Pokemon. And naturally, we'll start with the region that started it all, Kanto. Ditto is a failed clone of Mew, and it really can't get as old school as this. The theory suggests that a second attempt at a Mew clone was made after Mew 2, but ultimately failed and became the weird little blob Ditto. Now, this is backed up by the fact that they both learn the move Transform. And we also have to point out that they have similarly colored normal color schemes, plus identical shiny color schemes. They have the same weight, and they're both genderless. And on top of that, Ditto can be found in Pokemon Mansion and Cerulean Cave in the Kanto games, the former of which is home to Mewtwo's creation, and the latter is where it flew to afterwards. I guess the unfortunate part about all this is that this theory was debunked by Junichi Masuda in a 2016 interview, which is actually kind of a bummer, because all of that evidence is really compelling. Mewtwo is being created during the player's journey. This one is brought to us by none other than the Pokemon theorist legend Birdkeeper Toby, and this theory states that Mewtwo was being created by Team Rocket during the events of the Kanto games as opposed to before. As we know, they steal the Dig TM from a man in Cerulean City and search for fossils in nearby Mount Moon. The theory later says that Team Rocket used the Dig TM to dig to Cerulean Cave to search for more fossils, which is where they found the Mew fossil around the time the player picks their starter. Later, they would create Mewtwo in the abandoned Pokemon Mansion on February 6th. Notice how in the journal it doesn't say a year. That's the year the player starts their journey, with February 6th being the day. Then, all the times the player encounters Team Rocket, it serves as a distraction for the Mewtwo project. This all culminates in why Mewtwo escaped to Cerulean Cave to begin with, because that's where the Mew fossil was found. Team Rocket captured or killed Kanto's dark types to make sure that Mewtwo had little weaknesses. This rather dark theory was proposed by Reddit user CastAside1812, and it explains why no dark types are in Kanto in Generation 1. In order to make sure Mewtwo was as strong as possible, Team Rocket killed or captured all of them. Sure, there is the Ghost type, but in Gen 1, Psychic types are immune, and the Bug type moves available are crappy and are mostly on Pokemon Mewtwo could wipe away with just one attack. Dark is the only type strong against Psychic that's unavailable. Then in Gen 2, the direct sequels, you suddenly see the wild Dark types, Houndour and Murkrow in Kanto, as well as on Team Rocket admin's teams. And we gotta admit, we can't help but find that suspicious. Could Team Rocket have released them back into the wild? Who knows, but for now, let's travel on over to Johto. The legendary beasts originated from the original 3 evolutions. As we know, Ho-Oh resurrected 3 Pokemon that perished in a fire in the Burn Tower, and they became the legendary beasts Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. But as highlighted by Bonesweet on the Poke Community forums, there's a number of factors backing up that the Pokemon that died were the original 3 evolutions: Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon. The first and most obvious factor is that they have the same types and similar colors. Secondly, the normal abilities of the evolutions are Water Absorb for Vaporeon, Volt Absorb for Jolteon, and Flash Fire for Flareon, the same as the hidden abilities for their corresponding beast in Gens 5 and 6. Jolteon and Raikou also both have high speed and special attack, Flareon and Entei have decent attack, and Vaporeon and Suicune are bulky. Another small, likely coincidental thing to note is that the Kimono Girls, the group of trainers that use evolutions when the player battles them, reside in Ekritique City, exactly where the Burn Tower is located. But what if the legendary beasts did not originate from the evolutions? PokeTuber Not So Ace Trainer brings up the argument that the 3 Pokemon that died in the Burn Tower were not the evolutions, but simply 3 Eevee. He brings up how the legendary beasts were formed through the representations of the elements of the tragic event. Raikou represents the lightning that struck the tower, Entei the flames that spread, and Suicune the rain that put it out. With this in mind, a couple of Eevee's Pokedex entries are brought up which state that it has unstable DNA and adapts to harsh environments by evolving. With such heavy amounts of electricity, fire, and water, could this be enough for these Eevee to turn into something far greater than their normal evolutions? The beasts, perhaps? Ho-Oh was originally a Fearow. YouTuber Proto Mario starts this theory off by bringing up Ho-Oh's inspiration. The phoenix, a bird in Greek mythology, came into being by rising from the ashes of a bird which died in flames. He comes to the conclusion that Ho-Oh rose up from the ashes of a Fearow and got got engulfed in flames and died. This is backed up by the fact that they both have crests on their head, long beaks, and similar body structures, talons, and tail and wing feathers. But let's move on over to the home of the third generation. Next up is Hoenn. The original 3 Regis represent World War II survivors. A popular theory among the Japanese fan community states that Regirock, Regice, and Registeel represent the survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. First off, Hoenn is inspired by the Japanese island of Kyushu, which is where Nagasaki is located. The areas in which the Regis are found in the games appear to correlate with real locations in Kyushu. Regice in the aforementioned Nagasaki, where the first atomic bomb was dropped, Registeel in Miyazaki, and Regirock in Oita. Those other 2 cities were both home to important military bases that were heavily bombed by the US as well. The theory goes on to say that Relicanth and Wailord, the 2 Pokemon needed to catch the Regis, sort of resemble the shapes of Little Boy and Fat Man, the 2 atomic bombs. One of the Braille messages in the sealed chamber also makes mention of how people used to live in it, possibly meaning that it was a place to take cover during the bombings. Then in Generation 4, Regigigas' location in Snow Point Temple mirrors that of Wakanai Hokkaido, home of the Monument of Peace and the Soya Kaiko Navy War Memorial. And then to top this theory off, all 3 Regis know the move Explosion, the origins of the Weather Trio. Some now deleted Reddit posts brought up the theory that Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza used to be a Wailord, Aggron, and Gyarados respectively. Their reasoning is that in Generation 3, Kyogre and Wailord were the only 2 Pokemon that learned the move Water Spout, and that they both have the same color scheme in both their normal and shiny forms. Meanwhile, Aggron makes its homes on mountains, and Groudon is awakened at Mount Chimney. Aggron's evolutionary line eats ore from underground, and Groudon is a ground type. Then Mega Aggron has spikes on its body, and Groudon has similar ones on its tail. And then both have 3 claws on each foot. As for the final trio member, Gyarados and Rayquaza don't have much of a difference height and weight-wise, being 21 feet 4 inches tall and 518 pounds, and 23 feet tall and 455.2 pounds, respectively. Both are part flying type, and even though Gyarados isn't a dragon, dragon-type trainers like Claire and Lance have used it on their teams. Could some strange phenomenon have happened to make these Pokemon completely become a new species? Jirachi gifted Rayquaza the power of Mega Evolution. Reddit user Flarestorm88 argues that when the Draconid people wished for Rayquaza to protect them and stop the fight between Groudon and Kyogre, Jirachi was the one who granted their wish by giving Rayquaza the ability to Mega Evolve. This is backed up by some of Jirachi's Pokedex entries stating that it will grant any wish for just 1 week every 1,000 years. And, well, Kyogre and Groudon fight every 1,000 years, and Jirachi grants wishes, so there you go. Deoxys and Pokerus are connected. Poketuber's hybrid hero and Azimitsu bring up that Deoxys was formed from the mutation of the DNA of a space virus, according to several of its Pokedex entries. Then you have Pokerus, a rare virus that if a Pokemon is infected with it, gains double the EVs upon defeating an opponent. It's argued that when the meteor containing the space virus fell to Earth, part of it could have escaped and become Pokerus. The similarities don't end there though, as both Deoxys and Pokerus have an emphasis on stats. Pokerus has the EV doubling as previously stated, while Deoxys has its various forms that boost one of its stats. Also, when a Pokemon is infected with Pokerus, it gains a purple icon to indicate so, and Deoxys has a purple core. Additionally, Deoxys's regular colors are red and blue, which make purple, and its shiny is yellow, the same color as the symbol indicating a Pokemon is cured of Pokerus. But let's move on to the most lore-focused region yet. Sinnoh is bound to have some good theories. The Lake Guardians are connected to Unova's Tau Trio. Ancient Skull Kid on Tumblr proposes the idea that once the original dragons split into Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem, the Lake Guardians, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, helped influence them. Uxie represents knowledge, and as a result may have helped Reshiram become the Legendary of Truth because the two are similar in theory. Mesprit, which represents emotion, could have helped Zekrom become the Legendary of Ideals because people form ideals from their feelings. Azelf, meanwhile, represents willpower, thus potentially helping helping Hiram find a balance between truth and ideals, since truth is based on will. And as a bonus theory, the theorist also proposes that the Lake Guardians are connected to unknown. Euxie is connected to the letters, which are used to communicate knowledge, Azelf to the question mark, which is used to ask questions for something you want, and Mesprit the exclamation point, which is used to express strong emotions. Giratina was meant to calm Dialga and Palkia. A theory circulating on Reddit brings up how Giratina was banished to the Distortion World by Arceus for its violent actions, but notes that it's often kind, calm, and acts as a protector. Redditor Lochi01 proposes that Giratina was originally created to serve a similar purpose as Rayquaza, to calm Dialga and Palkia if a harsh battle between them broke out. But what were these acts of violence that caused it to get banished? Dialga and Palkia might have had a fight so violent one day that Giratina believed it would be better to kill them both to prevent further destruction. This banishment then caused Arceus to give the role of controlling Dialga and Palkia to the Lake Guardians, who would do so using the Red Chain. And since Giratina is capable of leaving the Distortion World and has stopped the duo from getting harmed, such as when it stopped Cyrus in Pokemon Platinum, perhaps it had since learned how important the duo's roles are in the Pokemon world. Why Regigigas created the Regis? Gabrielle Duenas on Reddit came up with the theory that when people witnessed Regigigas towing the continents and seeing its sheer power, they started to worship it and see it as a protector. Regigigas, however, couldn't take on the task of becoming a guardian because pushing the continents around made it so tired, which is honestly pretty understandable. So to make the people happy, it created Regirock, Regice, and Registeel, so they would feel safe and it would leave to find a place to rest. The theorist then explains that as Regigigas went to rest, it suddenly heard that the original dragon, which was in Galar, split and flew to Unova. It then traveled to Galar, fearing that things would go out of balance, and using flesh from the original dragon, created Regidrago, but could only finish its head. It also created Regieleki from the original dragon's plasma, but before it could give it a vessel, it became weaker and fainted, causing its creations to wreak havoc throughout the Pokemon world. The people then started to fear Regigigas, misunderstanding what it was trying to do, and sealed it away along with the other Regis. Finally, being that weak for so long gave it the ability's slow start. But now it's time to travel outside Japan for the first time. As we enter Unova, the Swords of Justice are originally from Kalos. As we know, there are some aspects of Pokemon that mirror the real world. Reddit user 69Kuda highlights how Kalos is based on France and Unova is based on the US. And with the Swords of Justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion being based on the Three Musketeers. A French story, could they originally be from Kalos? But if that's the case, how did they end up in Unova? The theorist highlights that the lore states that there was a war in Unova in which humans started a forest fire. The Swords of Justice swept in and saved as many Pokemon as they could and went into hiding afterwards. Their theory is that this war mirrors the real-life French and Indian War, a battle which ended in the French ceding some of their territory in America to the British. In the Pokemon version, as Kalos colonized Unova, they brought the Swords of Justice with them, and when the war ended, the trio simply remained in Unova after going into hiding. The original dragon represents dreams. This theory lays out what we know about the Tau trio. Reshiram represents truth, Zekrom represents ideals, and Kyurem represents emptiness. Additionally, in black, the old is rejected in favor of the new, and vice versa in white. And part of Kyurem's name comes from the word nothing. Theorists then go on to say that dreams play a significant part in Gen 5 with elements like the Dream World and Dream Radar. With all that in mind, the original dragon must represent something that self-contradicts itself. Zekrom and Reshiram need the aura of a human to come back to life, and dreams can be unachievable, meaning it's the only time truth and ideals can coexist. So with that said, the original dragon represents dreams or ambitions. Victini represents an atomic bomb. Some theorists have pointed out how Victini's name comes from the words tiny and victory, and how its Pokedex entry says it creates limitless energy in its body and releases it. That limitless energy might be a reference to an atomic bomb's power, and Victini's fire typing might reference the aftermath of the bomb being dropped. As we discussed in the Reggie theory in the Hoenn section, the US dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, and one was called Little Boy. Well, Unova is based on the US, and Victini is quite a little boy. Victini also makes the V victory sign with its hands, which people used after World War II when the enemy was defeated. Also, the move V-Create is a V on fire, somewhat resembling an arrow pointing down, and Victini's ability ability Victory Star increases accuracy. But let's move on to the first European-inspired regions. Next up is Kalos. Yveltal isn't evil. Now, you're probably all thinking, Yveltal is the destruction Pokemon and evil is literally part of its name. But Reddit user Kakyoan Crusader doesn't exactly agree with the common sentiment. They refer to the movie Deontay and the Cocoon of Destruction, where Yveltal got disturbed from its sleep in its cocoon, and that's what caused it to destroy everything in its path. Now, we all know the anime's canon is completely separate from the game's canon, but this still stands. The theorist then argues that Yveltal didn't choose its power of destruction itself, but was born with it, thus making it a curse. Basically, it doesn't want to kill, but it has to because of what it was born with. Putting more salt in the wound is that it was alone in its cocoon its entire life, making it blind because it's so dark. Carbink transforms into Deontay when under pressure. You ever wonder why Carbink doesn't evolve into Deontay? After all, the two are nearly identical. Reddit user Blue Boy Smash has a theory as to what the relationship between the two actually are. Deontay's Pokedex entry states that it is a sudden mutation of Carbink, so because of that, this theorist turned to the power of geology. They say that diamonds in real life are rocks that form under the compression of carbon atoms, and Carbink's diamonds are blue, and this correlation happens when diamonds are infused with boron during formation. Deontay, however, has pink diamonds, and this coloration occurs when it's exposed to extreme heat and pressure after being formed. So with all this in mind, Carbink possibly transforms into Deontay when it's exposed to an extremely painful source of stress, such as if it's being crushed. Hoopa is saving legendaries from certain destruction. I Am From Mars AMA on Reddit brings up how in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Pokemon, including legendaries from other regions, can be found in mirage spots and how Hoopa is the one responsible. However, Hoopa isn't transporting them to Hoenn out of malice, but to protect their regions from being destroyed by an incoming meteoroid. In the Delta episode, Zinnia explains how there is a second Hoenn region and it would be destroyed by the meteoroid since Mega Evolution doesn't exist in it, as Mega Rayquaza is the only one capable of stopping it. The theory also suggests that since the legendaries use the original versions of the battle themes from their respective games, Hoopa must have transported them from their home region, thus circling this theory back to its original point. But it's time for some tropical breezes and fun in the sun because Alola is up next. The 18th Memory. As pointed out by Spider Manectric on Reddit, the Aether Foundation's original Type Null project was called Type Full, as a means to recreate Arceus and its ability to change its type via its various plates. On the deleted Type Full files reads, dummy test of the RKS system program has been completed. Type has been successfully altered with all 18 special memories. The transplantation of the RKS system program to the models is underway. The BK's official name has been set as Type Full. Notice how 18 memories are mentioned when in-game there are only 17 for all except normal. Well, this suggests that there is an 18th normal type memory out there, waiting to be discovered for Silvally to use. How Lily carries Cosmoem in her bag. When playing through the Gen 7 games, we probably all asked ourselves, how can Lily be carrying Cosmoem in that bag and not come crashing down? After all, it's tied for the heaviest Pokemon at 2,204.4 pounds. PokeTuber Gator EX brings up how the floating Cosmoem may be able to sense Lily's movements and keep itself in the middle of her bag at all times so as to not bring her down. However, it's essentially a cocoon and can barely move, so this could just be another case of Pokemon sizes meaning nothing. Like, how else do you explain Wailord shrinking down when sending it out to battle? Okay, that last theory wasn't the best, so let's end Alola off with something with substance. Magearna and Spiritomb are connected. Gaffacakes from Reddit makes the connection that both Magearna and Spiritomb are made from souls. Magearna with its soul heart and Spiritomb from its 108 souls. They also bring up that the souls that make up Spiritomb were bound to the odd keystone 500 years ago, as was the creation of Magearna. Spiritomb has more connections to the number 108, those being that both its defensive stats are 108, its weight 108 kilograms, and its Sinnoh Pokedex number is 108. On the other hand, Magearna's Pokedex number is 801, the exact reverse of 108. With that said, this theorist suggests that either Spiritomb inspired the creation of Magearna, or Magearna's creator collected some of Spiritomb's soul energy to create the Soul Heart. But moving on to our second to last region, The 8th generation Galar. Zacian and Zamazenta's origins. Nuigi12 on Reddit brings up how Zacian's sword is named the Fairy King's sword, but who was the Fairy King exactly? While not being a fairy type, Calyrex is very fairy-like and of course is a king, so this theorist proposes that Calyrex was the one that gave Zacian its sword. Zamazenta, meanwhile, is referred to as the Flying Master's shield. So what if Urshifu was the fighting master that trained it? After all, Urshifu is a very talented fighter that can master 2 different fighting styles, and Behemoth Bash's move animation features Zamazenta rushing forward, much like Single Strike Urshifu's Wicked Blow. Eternatus is linked to Ultra Beasts. Proposed by Redditor Alcoholic Socks, this theory brings up that much like the Ultra Beasts, Eternatus does not come from the Pokemon world as it came from a meteorite. Next, the Dynamax phenomenon in Galar came about after it was defeated by Zacian and Zamazenta, causing its energy to leak out. This next part of the theory then takes us to Alola, where we take a look at totem Pokemon, which became larger than other Pokemon of their species after being exposed to energy from Ultra Wormholes. So with both Dynamax and Ultra Wormhole energy able to make Pokemon bigger, Eternatus can easily be connected somehow, especially when you take in the fact that Necrozma and Cosmog, 2 other Pokemon that aren't Ultra Beasts, have links to Ultra Wormholes too. Glastrier and Spectrier were one Pokemon. This theory reminds us of how in the Crown Tundra, the player has to pick between Glastrier or Spectrier to become Calyrex's steed. But what if the 2 horses were once one Pokemon? The theory states that Calyrex came and tamed this Pokemon and started using it as its steed. Then when the Crown Tundra froze again, Calyrex weakened and had to leave the horse behind. Not being able to fend for itself, the horse eventually died, with Glastrier forming from the remnants of its frozen body, and Spectrier forming from its spirit. But let's move on over to our final region, and talk about Paldea. Miss Rayford has evil intentions. This theory is only partially related to legendaries, but still interesting nonetheless. This one suggests that Miss Rayford, the history professor at the academy that sends the player on their quest to catch the treasures of ruin, actually has sinister intentions or was a scrapped antagonist. Backing this up is that she gives the player the nasty plot TM when they catch the treasures of ruin, as well as her dialogue, saying that she wanted to search for them on her own but was only successful in getting them because she sent the player, someone with a pure heart. Terapagos brings dreams into reality. Another theory that went pretty viral was that Paradox Pokemon come from dreams as opposed to the past or future, and Terapagos is the one bringing them into reality. What backs this up is a frame from Gen 5's Dream World, which has a cloud framed scene exactly like the starting screen of Scarlet and Violet. This brings us to the conclusion that the Paradox Pokemon are brought into the real world from the Dream World. Further backing this up is the fact that it has also been shown to project into the past by connecting the dreams of both Pokemon and people. Whether you believe this theory or not, I think we can agree with that one Redditor who's just happy seeing Hydreigon happy near the rainbow. The player's Koraidon/Miraidon is Heath Cyclizar. Rounding things out is Redditor Terosikin's theory, that continues from a previous one of theirs, which states that Paradox Pokemon come from an alternate timeline, and are simply regular Pokemon that are exposed to mysterious scales, and come to our timeline through Seda/Turo's time machine. With that said, Heath Cyclizar could have been one of those Pokemon that transformed into the Koraidon/Miraidon used by the player. This is backed up by the fact that the player's dragon is friendly, unlike the one that killed the professor, is the only one that is rideable, doesn't fight until the end of the game, and its Terra type is locked to dragon, just like a regular Cyclizar.
I'll try and take us back to the beginning.
From Brock's endless weird flirting, to that time that James from Team Rocket got an inflatable chest, to Detective Pikachu getting a finger in his, wait, what happened? The world of Pokemon is actually filled with adult humor, and these are the Pokemon franchise's adult jokes, cleanest to dirtiest. But we can't talk about the Pokemon franchise without talking about the games. Light years away from Brock. One trainer in Gen 3 remarks that you're light years away from beating Brock, but after being defeated and thereby proven wrong, he clarifies that light years means distance, not time. But I mean, either way, that's gonna take a while. That's like 6 trillion miles. You just made yourself more wrong, kid. Maybe go train yourself in basic logic. Only the finest of air for our citizens. In one of many unfortunately worded NPC comments in the series, Gen 3 sees one kid remark that the Hoenn region's air is, quote, tasty. I guess anywhere that's relatively unpolluted is a treat nowadays. The objectification of Pokémon. And no, not that kind. I'm talking about the PC, the area where you can store Pokémon to make room in your inventory. It's like a bank. You know, that big corporation that holds all your money in vaults? Yeah, when I think about potential pet sitters, I don't usually gravitate towards my local bank. And how exactly do the Pokémon feel about this? Like, alright Pikachu, time for your stay at Wells Fargo. I'll be back in a few days or a couple of months or whenever I feel like it. Money problems. Don't you love it when your favorite games feature money problems? Just to remind you that nothing is perfect. Well, in Gen 1, there's a guy who tries to sell you a bike for 1 million Pokemon currency, which, if we were to assume it's based on Japanese yen, is still over $6,000. For that price, I'm gonna have to call up my buddy who's an expert on bikes. Celadon Game Corner. The main way you get the rare specimen known as Porygon is by literal gambling at the Celadon Game Corner, run by Team Rocket. While stealing people's Pokemon just to use them as prizes for kids to gamble for is downright evil. Honestly, you just kinda have to respect the grind here. Growing Pains of Golbat. Gen 1 sprites were, well, they were a mixed bag. For every absolute delight, like good old chubby Pikachu, or Chunkachu as many of us call him, there is a demonic hellspawn like Golbat, which you know what this looks like? It looks like that one meme of Shaggy. If I had to see it, so do you. It's over 9,000. Pokemon X and Y features a reference to an iconic Dragon Ball Z moment when an NPC compliments you on your Pokemon's power level surely being over 9,000. Looks like you've got more rivals, Vegeta. The Virgin Nuclear Weaponry versus the Chad War Criminal Pokemon. The gym leader of Vermilion City, Lieutenant Surge, remarks that electric Pokemon saved his life during the war by paralyzing his enemies. First of all, good for you, Pikachu. Second of all, are we just gonna gloss over the fact that he said Pokemon are being used as weapons of war? Are they weapons or veterans? Do they get medals? This really opens a lot of uncomfortable doors. Coughing and wheezing mustard gas, Voltorb suicide bombers, the endless possibilities for how ghost and psychic types could absolutely change the state of modern warfare. If one country captures a legendary, is this like an Oppenheimer level event?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
I don't like any of it. Lavender Town. Perhaps one of the most famous examples of creepy gaming trivia is Pokemon's Lavender Town. The wildly unsettling music and creepy NPCs talking about ghostly hands and asking you for your blood are one thing. Well, technically two things. But the fact that you actually do fight ghosts here makes it all the more uneasy. It was a different time. Sometimes moms spend so much time cooking in the kitchen for their hungry kids that you might say they practically live there. Well, Red's mom literally does. Seriously, the only 2 rooms or even doors in his house are those of his bedroom and of the kitchen. Sure, there's a lot of housewives who spend a lot of time in the kitchen, but this is ridiculous. This is your brain on caffeine. Remember this weird old guy who keeps you from leaving Viridian City too early? First of all, who do you think you're talking to? And second, his granddaughter remarks that he just hasn't had his coffee yet. But I don't know about you, but usually my first cup of coffee doesn't lead to me lying on the ground as I allow children to leave the city limits. Shorts supremacy. You know how sometimes kids will say things that sound really bad out of context, and you just have to hold your tongue? That's exactly what happens in the Kanto region, where 2 kids introduce themselves by telling you how much they like wearing shorts, and how they dislike when you aren't wearing shorts. Gotta catch a case. Not everybody in the Pokemon universe is interested in watching animals beat the heck out of each other. In the first generation games, an old man peeping into a woman's gym gives it a glowing review because of just how many women are in it. You know, in the women's gym. Somebody needs to call Officer Jenny. Blue used insensitivity. It's super effective, especially in one scene where he's at the Pokemon Tower, a place where people go to mourn their dead Pokemon. Here, he sees you and immediately comments that your Pokemon aren't dead, and he can at least make them faint for you. It's easy to dismiss this, but maybe Blue's just processing his own grief in a really weird way. Still, not the place, man. Settle down, Chairman. During your visit to the Pokemon fan club, you might run into the chairman. He loves his Rapidash so much that the mere thought of it straight up gives him a stroke, until he's done talking about it. It's even weirder when you consider that when he's not talking about Rapidash, he's perfectly coherent. I guess everyone has that one crush that makes them lose the capability for making proper sentences. It's just that it shouldn't be a freaking horse though. Some Pokemon are terrible parents. Take Kangaskhan for instance. This kangaroo-esque Pokemon carries a little baby in its pouch, and its entry in the yellow Pokedex states that it won't run away from any fight to keep its young protected. Now, having pride in your strength is one thing, but letting your baby be an involuntary meat shield is next level scummy. Disappointing vacation. When you enter the hotel in Celadon City, you'll find 3 people in there, 2 of which are brother and sister, the latter of whom is excited for a vacation with her 2 favorite people. The third person is her boyfriend, who wasn't told ahead of time that her brother would be tagging along. Honestly, that really should be the kind of thing you tell your partner ahead of time. A true gourmet. Remember, phrasing is always important. Case in point, Professor Oak's phrase, "I came when I heard you beat the Elite Four," has a very questionable double meaning. It's been memed ever since the earliest days of meme culture. Sure, it's unintentional, but we're not gonna act like it isn't weird that he showed up so quickly after your victory. Almost like he was watching the whole time. The ultimate wingman. When Shauna comments on how excited she is to be watching fireworks with a boy for the first time, it's followed up by the butler giving him a gift. That gift? The item for the move Protect. And I can't decide if he's an absolute bro, kind of a creep, or both for doing that. Professor Kinkui. When Professor Kukui is training his Pokemon, it would have been perfectly easy to start the cutscene showing said training. Instead, we see the outside of his house, complete with him telling his trainees to give it all they've got, and his body is ready. There's gotta be some kind of law against this, right? There's definitely one against this. The Ferris wheel scenes of Pokemon Black and White are a mixed bag. Like, literally. Some of them are wholesome and sweet, like riding with a lonely, anxious woman who just needs some company. Other times, you might end up with a creepy old hiker who asks if you've ever had a lover. What the hell, sir? Either way, I'm sure you'll have one in jail. Duff and Edna's battle. Just look at these two. To be young and in love, and the Pokemon they choose represents their love. One of them being a long, hard Onix, and the other being a Cloyster. Y'all realize these trainers are kids, right? These entries seem to be getting really illegal. What you doing, Step Onix? In one game, you'll find a female trainer who says she loves, quote, really big things. And if you show her Onix, she's amazed and remarks on how much fun it would be to ride on that big, hard boulder. Okay, who at Pokemon HQ just has a huge weird crush on Onix? A lady's secret. So remember how we talked about the moral gray area of keeping Pokemon in banks near the beginning of this section? Well, it could be worse. When asked where she keeps her Pokeballs, given that she has a bikini on, she just cheekily says it's a woman's secret. Emphasis on cheekily. Primeape. In Pokepark, Pikachu's Adventure, Primeape says that he's learned Iron Tail. The problem, he doesn't have a tail. And that's not some obscure trivia. He legitimately reminds you of it. And to answer your question, no, Primeape, I do not want to know what that means. But I will congratulate you on overcoming your ED diagnosis. Good for you, champ. But now we move on to the Pokemon anime. And honestly, the hidden adult humor here really gets kicked up a notch. Japan exclusive jokes. Due to language barriers and cultural differences, some jokes in the original Japanese anime wouldn't make sense to the average Western viewer, so allow us to help. In the very first episode, the scene where, in English, Ash tells Pikachu to open his mouth and say what's wrong was originally him asking Pikachu to listen to his story, using the word Hanashi. Pikachu mishears that as Hanashi, meaning no teeth, so he was basically proving Ash wrong by showing his pearly whites. In episode 9, Joe's yearbook shows that he's drawn a love umbrella under a picture of Giselle, basically the equivalent of drawing hearts around your crush in school. In episode 12, the Squirtle Squad are all dressed in Edo period firefighter garb, from a time where wooden villages had their own community firefighters. And finally, in the original Japanese theme song's lyrics, Ash confirms that he's gonna get every Pokemon out there through fire, water, grass, or that girl's skirt. That is legitimately in the Japanese theme song. Good one? 4Kids dubs have a unique reputation to say the least. But the strangest addition has to be a running gag where Ash's mom reminds him to wear his underwear, or to clean it.
Don't forget to change your underwear.
Which begs the question, is this a genuine problem he has? Ash and Brock need to chill. Few animated trios are as iconic as Brock, Ash, and Misty, but looking back, the way she's treated would sometimes raise a few eyebrows. In one episode, Ash compares her to a particular Snubbull because, like her, she's a grumpy girl who's not afraid to chase Pokemon.
A grumpy girl who's not afraid to chase Pokemon. That reminds me of Misty in a way.
Sure, he insists that was a compliment, but there's not much of another way to interpret him calling a lady ugly directly to her face in another scene.
Something that ugly only shows up in my nightmares.
And Brock isn't innocent either. In School of Hard Knocks, Brock refers to a rude student saying,
"I hate the way she treats us, but I like the way she looks."
It's not hard to see why Misty has such a short fuse with these two. Case in point, when the gang goes to the beach, as any anime group will at some point, Ash remarks that it's weird to see Misty in a bikini. And the way he words this,
"It's just weird to see you looking like a girl."
Ash roasts Brock. But Brock isn't safe from Ash's unintentional insults either. When Brock laments how he was rejected by the one girl he ever loved, Ash tries to console him by saying,
"Don't worry, Brock. You'll find plenty of other girls to reject you."
So that's why he's always sleepy. When an old hippie wakes a sleeping Snorlax up with his magic Pokeflute, the big guy is immediately hungry. Or, as the hippie would say,
"Looks like you got a case of the munchies."
And honestly, if any Pokemon was a stoner, it would probably be Snorlax. But if it's making you that lethargic, you might want to cut back. Got Miltank? Miltank's healing magic can be given through its milk, but did you know that it can actually heal with just a touch? But for one Cyndaquil, that wasn't enough. He saw the opportunity to suck on some cow udders and went for it. Shout out to Miltank for seemingly having no problem with this, but it is very weird. Jesse says what we're all thinking. When James dresses as a Moltres, Jesse confirms that it came right out of his closet.
"I think that costume came right out of his closet." Which
one could read as a cheeky nod to James's sexuality. Because let's be real, James is about as straight as a circle drawn on a roller coaster. Clement, you good man? In the episode Keeper for Keeps, Bonnie casually reveals that her older brother likes to, quote,
"He likes to take off his shirt and wrap himself in an arbok."
It's bad enough that her brother seems to have a thing for snakes, but the fact that his very young sister knows, man, they really need to be more selective with who can own Pokemon. Gotta love subtext. In one of Ash's very first battles, he faces off against Samurai, a very fittingly named boy who decides to engage in a Metapod on Metapod battle. Now, I know it's just what Metapods do, but come on. There's no way these voice actors weren't cracking up basically saying harder Metapod in different ways. Even better, sometimes they'll just encourage them by saying they're the strongest Metapod.
"Little more! Metapod! Full power!"
In other words, they're hyping their Pokemon up to get them hard. Meowth needs some boundaries. Jesse and James take a potion that ends up making Pokemon attracted to them, which James finds out the hard way through what appears to be an unwilling smooch session with Meowth. Meowth, that's just not right. And Meowth isn't the only thirsty Pokemon, but unlike him, Medicham doesn't have the excuse of being influenced by pheromones. In a blink and you miss it scene, it uses its telekinesis to lift multiple objects in the room, including a woman's skirt.
My Pokemon unconsciously unleashed a burst of psychic energy.
Ampharos X Mareep. Here's a tip. If you want someone's attention, you should just walk up and talk to them. You should not start pulling on sensitive body parts from behind, like Ampharos does to Mareep in this scene. In the words of Billy Madison,
"That's assault, brother."
Team Rocket infighting. When Jesse and James are at a doctor's office, they speak in rhymes, as they often do, but this one has a more vulgar subtext. After Jesse says she's there to stop her chafing and itching, James remarks,
"It might finally stop all of Jesse's complaining."
Yeah, that's not the first word that comes to mind in that little poem. But you have to respect such a passive-aggressive roast, though. Steelix, too? Man, how many perverted Pokemon are there? In one episode, a Steelix Lynx chases Ash, Brock, and Dawn into the tight crevice of a mountain. And nothing to see here, folks. Just an aggressive, hard, long object trying to force itself into a small hole. We really need to get some of these Pokemon some psychological evaluations.
I guess that means we're safe, at least for now.
Brock's simple wish. In one of many moments where Brock puts his lust on full display, the Season 2 premiere sees him meeting his beloved Cynthia for the first time, saying that he wishes he was in her arms instead of the ice cream cone she just licked. But we think he should be more like that ice cream for another reason, because he needs to chill. And trust us, that is not the only thirsty Brock moment. Just to name a few, Brock has kept a stalker-esque journal full of pictures of Olivia, tracked her down and built their relationship from said stalking, told a breeder named Susie that he wants to
I want to breed like you,
correcting himself to be a breeder like her. When shown a picture of Giselle, said that she could, quote,
she can violate my rights if...
And the award for the most absolutely messed up thing Brock has said about a woman goes to Casey. And not a woman, but a girl. As she walks off, Brock comments,
Casey's gonna be a very interesting young lady. I wonder if she has a sister.
And in the original Japanese version, he says, she'll be fun in 8 years. You know what's not fun, Brock? Jail. James's inflated chest. As if Team Rocket wasn't stealing the show enough already. In the censored episode Beauty and the Beach, Misty unknowingly enters a beauty pageant with Jesse and James in it as well, and it looks like James decided to inflate himself a bit of an advantage. We know that Team Rocket are the antagonists, but they're really shooting for the gold in that beauty contest. Let's move away from the TV show and talk about the movies. Croconaw Dundee. In Pokemon Forever, there's a Croconaw whose trainer named him Dundee, a reference to the classic 1980s movie Crocodile Dundee.
A Croconaw, huh? Never battled one of those before.
You gotta love the innocent pop culture nods for the grown-ups. Jirachi's long list of wishes. In the Jirachi Wishmaker movie, the opening lists off many hopes and dreams, ending with one wish.
To meet lots and lots of girls. Well, I didn't say all their wishes involve Pokemon.
And we think we know who this wish belongs to. Meowth ships it. Jesse and James' relationship advice can be summed up in one word: no. Jesse says that getting involved with the opposite sex is trouble, and James agrees, going further to say,
yes, and that's the kind of trouble I stay out of.
Funny as that is on its own, it's made better by the fact that Meowth says they don't even need the opposite sex. They have each other.
What does that mean?
Good for him getting over his feelings for James. You'll find someone for you, Meowth. So, who's gonna tell her? While Jesse and James are dancing, they end up swapping with another pair by accident. While Jesse is more than happy to be in the arms of a handsome man, James is nervous to be dancing with May, which is mainly because she does, in fact, know him. But many have said they think James wouldn't mind being in Jesse's shoes here, accepting a loss. When Team Rocket lets go of Lugia, they recite one of their iconic rhyming catchphrases.
Let's not say goodbye.
Let's just say
we're gonna die.
Meowth isn't all that great at goodbyes, but he is great at accepting the inevitability of death. Detective Pikachu's mild language. You didn't really think we were gonna leave Detective Pikachu out of the discussion, right? It's rare to see family movies get away with any level of cursing. Usually it's censored in cheeky ways, but Detective Pikachu got a few examples past the censors. There are still some cheeky censors, like Pikachu's
"And oh, sweet mother of Arceus, that feels so good,"
which, while it isn't a swear, could be the Pokemon equivalent of "oh my god," since Arceus is basically the god of the Pokemon world. Then there's Lucy straight up saying in one scene, which is actually impressive for a PG-rated movie. But just across the language barrier. In English, saying "you can shove it" is already pretty vulgar on its own, but the Castilian Spanish dub goes a few steps further by saying "go f*** yourself," and having Pikachu clarify that he heard correctly.
What? I can shove it? Okay, that's it. No, we're switching roles.
And honestly, props to them for giving us a cursing Pikachu. Irritation Krabbies. In the 2000 Pokemon movie, we can briefly overhear a girl talking with some friends telling the tail end of a joke.
And she says, no, but I have Krabbies.
Given the punchline, it seems like there was at least the thought of someone having crabs. And let's be real, even if crabs had some form of Pokemon universe creature counterpart, those would be the absolute last type of Pokemon anyone would want to catch. Tim's unintentional creep factor. When Lucy warns Tim that it's dangerous to be around the harbor at night, he reassures her with the worst phrase he could have used around a potential love interest.
I'm actually pretty good at being alone at night.
Pikachu is full of electricity and even he's shocked. Even Team Rocket deals with expenses. When Jesse and James see a distressed Giovanni, they panic that he's going to do something drastic to them. It's telling that out of all the horrific things Giovanni's done, their greatest fear is that he'll ask for their expense reports. I mean, with how much destruction they cause, I'd be nervous too. But wait a minute, can't Meowth just summon gold coins out of thin air? Why would you guys ever even be worried about finances? James and the dangers of anonymous dating. When Team Rocket comes across a room full of unknowns, he quips,
I haven't seen this many strange letters since the last time I placed a personal ad.
Since this was back in 2000, that's basically the predecessor of dating apps. James put some info out there and got some apparently weird responses. But come on, James had to know that people out there couldn't resist his style. Mr. Mime's Demimes. Detective Pikachu's take on Mr. Mime is very devoted to his craft, even when others use that devotion to kidnap and threaten to burn him alive. The show must go on. So after Tim and Pikachu are done interrogating him, things go south when Tim drops an imaginary lighter onto some imaginary gasoline, imaginarily burning the poor guy alive. Pikachu seems a little too amused by this.
That went dark fast. I like this very much.
Which I'd call him out for, if it wasn't one of the funniest parts of the movie. Running from the Apoms. Oh, poor Tim. Nobody believed the guy when he was being chased by some crazy Apoms. By the time they've come to their senses, Tim has totally lost his. He's pantsless, and has huffed enough gasoline to look like a total drug addict. Oh, I know you aren't talking, Pikachu. Anyone who watches the movie can tell this little guy has a serious caffeine addiction. When Tim brings it up, he even says the most iconic addict line out there.
I could stop whenever I want.
You didn't think Brock was done trying to flirt, right? The moment he lays eyes on Domino, he busts out the puns and the desperation in one convenient package. He asks her if they can go somewhere else to line up and see if we're a match, which is quite a playful way to say he wants to fall on top of her in a private room, or vice versa. Even his friends are fed up. When Brock asks Diana to protect the group, the whole of his squad looks at him with the same disappointed expression, even Ash. Misty quips,
Then she'd need protection from you.
And honestly, Brock might need some burn heal for that one. They do what? Okay, apparently Detective Pikachu is a victim. He casually talks about how much his fans love him.
Pat me or they kiss me, they stick a finger in me.
He can solve all kinds of mysteries, but he can't solve that trauma he's been through. Especially Tim. When Tim first brings Pikachu to his apartment, the latter tells him,
I never do this. I'm not that kind of Pokemon.
Which, what does that even mean? Are there actual Pokemon prostitutes? Is that legal? The behavior is common enough for Pikachu to call it a kind of Pokemon, right? Honorable mention to the fact that Pikachu was both flattered and creeped out by Tim's Pikachu bed. And if you want to make the joke even worse, remember that Detective Pikachu is actually Tim's father in a Pikachu's body. Now that's super effective at putting Tim right into therapy.